You're listening to China Manufacturing Decoded from the Sofeast Group. Hello, welcome back to the podcast. It's episode 270 today. Adrian hosting and Renaud's with me. Hi.
Yeah, hello Adrian and hello everybody.
Renaud, I wanted to go a bit more educational this week because sometimes when you're starting to work with a manufacturer, you're wondering, well, what do I need to have in place? What do I need to have done before I'm best, placed to get started? So when it comes to electrical and electronic products, maybe some kinds of hard goods as well, really what I'm looking for today is kind of a hard 30 minutes on your general tips on what you need to be thinking about to have in place and once you get started with your manufacturer.
Well, the first question I think is, what do you need from a manufacturer? Some people would be thinking, oh, I just distribute, I don't know, whatever, toasters, let's say. Okay, I'm in toasters and I work with this factory in, I don't know, in Ningbo, and they allow me to distribute these 3 models of their toasters with some small adjustments, and then this other one in Shenzhen that has these special things that are right. Okay, so what do I look for in a manufacturer? Well, these people will say I'm looking for a manufacturer that already has a bunch of products in their showroom because I do not want to go through the hassle of developing a new product and all these things, right? So that's one case. And if that's your case, then it's going to be very much, doing the sourcing work, probably going to trade shows to find the right suppliers that have the right samples on their booths, etc. Okay. And then you need to make sure that they are capable and, competent, like do they already sell these kinds of products to your country, especially if you're in a country with relatively more regulation, like the EU or the US, Canada, UK, etc. Or do they sell primarily, domestically or to some countries where there's fewer regulations, right? That's one thing. Are they specialized in this kind of product? Have they been doing that for a long time? Are they a trading company? Are they a manufacturer? What are they telling me? Is it the truth? Can they give me this kind of exclusivity and so on? Okay, then it goes very fast. It goes into commercial territory. Okay, so there's a strong focus on sourcing, commercial negotiations, and there is some due diligence about their capability, experience, etc. Okay, but it's the first thing usually is, do they have some samples that look good that I think I can resell, right? That's the starting point. And then there's the cases where, okay, you want to develop your own product. Maybe you already have developed your own products, right? So in that case, let's say you're looking for a manufacturer. I don't know, you've been manufacturing something in, I don't know, maybe remote controls, very special kinds of remote control. Okay, unique. It's your own product, your own design. Okay. And you've been making this in China, and then you sell a bunch of them on the USA market. And in this case, you say, okay, I need to transfer manufacturing, right? And maybe to a place like Malaysia, Vietnam, Thailand, these kinds of place. Okay. Then in that case, what are you going to be looking at? You're going to be looking at manufacturers of electronic products in general, not necessarily people who are very specialized in remote controls. And you don't care so much, about can they help you develop a new product? No, because you already have that product. You just want to transfer it, existing product. So you're just going to look at their manufacturing capabilities. Just going to look at, hey, what kind of products do they make? Are they making things that are roughly, same size, roughly same processes? what about the supply chain? Do I need to bring my own supply chain from China? Or are they going to be able to help me source certain components locally, right?
Mm.
Things like, what about their testing capabilities for this type of product? What kind of other products with RF functions do they work on? How do they test it? Do I need to teach them how to do all the testing, basically? I give them, or do I just give them, okay, this is the instructions, the protocols, and like you you figure out how to do it in your facility, right? You- and then general things like, again, is it a trading company? Is it really a manufacturer? How, can they make the numbers that I need them to make? Like, do they have the capacity? Do they have the quality systems? And so on. Okay. So in that case, you just look at the manufacturing and the supply chain. Do they manage the supply chain? Are they able to suggest some component suppliers? And also the general terms of how to work together. Am I going to be able to see the bill of materials? Are they going to be
Mm.
transparent about how much they add in terms of pricing on the bill of materials and how they price their work, etc., right? Versus maybe I just want them to promise a final price, and then I can negotiate it, and then I will try to hold them accountable to it. Well, mm, some people like to do that. Okay, so that's case number 2, right? And then case number 3 is, hey, I want to develop a new kind of product, right? So usually this, how to say, the certain products you don't want to develop from scratch. Like thinking of smartphones, tablets, laptops. There's a lot of products like this. Wow, there's so many factories that are specialized in this, that already have the whole kit of all these parts with this firmware, and everything is all, just put it together, just have the shape, the form factor, maybe on the hardware a little bit, and then have the sort of your own flavor on their software. It's so much faster. Okay. Very few companies now really develop things from scratch like this, right? Everybody looks at Apple,
Mm.
but very few people do like Apple, right? In this kind of product. Very few
Of
people really
course.
develop their own product all the way from scratch. Okay. But there are some other product categories where, you're out of luck. If you want to develop I don't know. I was talking about what remote controls earlier. Well, if you want the remote control to also have some extra features to, I don't know, be able to also have a display and, be sort of between a remote control and a smartphone, for example, right? Well, you're gonna have to do a lot of the work of developing it from scratch, right? And there's a lot of things where people have ideas that are sort of across different categories, and they realize, well, I need to go, sort of from scratch. And maybe you want I don't know why someone would do that, but maybe some earbuds. Okay, I've been working a lot of earbuds recently. And then also on the
Mm.
earbuds, they want to have, I don't know, maybe a camera mounted on it, or, because they say, well, there's going to be a lot of connected glasses, right? Eyewear with the camera in front. And actually, if you have the cameras at the level of your ears, they can also see a lot of things around you, and maybe also in front of you, depending on the geometry of the earbuds. So let's put some cameras in it.
Mhm.
Well, you know, that's going to be a lot of new things here, new development. Okay, I'm just making stuff up here, right? I don't think anybody's.
No, no, that's good.
So if you want to do something like this that is really off the beaten path, you're not going to find a manufacturer, even if you search in the whole of China, you're not going to find a manufacturer that already makes these kind of things. Okay, exactly that product. So somebody's going to have to do a lot of product design, right? And then the question is, what is the right time to involve a manufacturer? Okay, so what I generally suggest is that a few things. First, you need to do some of the work first. You can't just go to a manufacturer and say, well, this is my idea, like back of a napkin. Oh, yeah, just earbuds with a camera, and okay, so what angle should the camera be? I'm not sure. I just want it to work like kind of like the meta glasses, but it's not going to be right in front. It has to be a bit on the side, Okay, very, very unspecific. And what is the form factor? What is the earbuds going to look like? Can you point to a certain type of earbuds? Because there's so many on the market these days. Okay, point to a certain kind of earbud that has the right kind of shape, and then think of how to add the camera into it, and it's gonna have to be a little bit bigger and all these kind of things, and it's gonna add a bit of weight, and that has a lot of impacts. It's gonna pull the more energy from the battery. Does it have to connect to be connected to Wi-Fi, like the Meta glasses or something like that? That's going to draw a lot of battery power. It's going to have a lot of implications on the components on the board. I mean, wow. You start to go into that kind of rabbit hole, and basically you end up with a lot of questions. Okay, and you don't want to go to a manufacturer with all these questions, because the manufacturers are going to be scared. Like, whoa, okay, these guys, they have no idea about what they're doing, right? So you need to work on the industrial design, to work on the product requirements, to work on selecting the key components, picking the right design architecture. You need to start to do some work, maybe a proof of concept kind of prototype, etc., right? Then you have two options. Option one is you work maybe with your team or with a product development agency to do all of the product development work. And then if you do that, you're going to be talking to a manufacturer toward the end, but it's good to have them review the design and confirm manufacturability. Okay. And because otherwise you do all kinds of things and you get some really nice prototypes, and you probably pay a lot of money and wait a lot of time for a product of the complexity like the one I just mentioned. And then you go to manufacturers and they tell you, well, Joe, this is just not going to be possible. Like, how do we do this and how do that? And this cannot even be injection molded and blah, blah, blah. We can't assemble it like this. And have you thought of the way to close it like this? We cannot apply, I don't know, glue like this, or what about the acoustics effects inside and so on? Okay. They're just going to be scared, like, wow, this product is not a product. It's just like still some kind of concept that is not manufacturable. So they made one prototype or 5 prototypes, but it's not possible to manufacture it, right? So you go into a rework loop of redesigning, changing this and changing that, and then you go into another layer of complexity and so on. No, of course not. So you want to have feedback on manufacturability. Now, definitely, right? Okay. And in that case, also, you want to let the manufacturer put together the last prototype. When you're like, oh, okay, like pretty much we just need to adjust this a bit, adjust this, miniaturize this or whatever, make this little change. Next prototype is probably the last one. Instead of having your team putting the prototype together, get the engineers of the manufacturer you picked to put together the prototype so that they really learn and they start to also do some of the testing on their own. So that there's a lot of learning, and also by doing that, they'll be able to provide you a lot of extra feedback, okay, on the potential issues that they see. Right? And then after that, it goes into the traditional new product introduction process, where you go through several builds and you make the tooling and pre-production preparations, etc., etc. Okay, that's another topic. But that's if you want to handle all the product design and development internally, right? Second option is you, as I mentioned, you need to develop your own product from scratch. Okay, you want to get some help, and you want to work with a manufacturer that has some R&D capabilities, right? And so maybe you want to say, well, I'm going to hire maybe the software team. Maybe I'm going to hire, I don't know, maybe the electronics team, but I don't want to do the mechanical side. Or, I want them to do the mechanical and the electronics or whatever, right? You see what you can do already and what you want to hire a team for, and you work for a manufacturer that can do the rest of the work. Okay. It's also possible that some manufacturers that do that, it can work well. But from our experience, because we've been doing that a lot at Julian, is you need to be very clear about who is the technical lead. Okay. You can't. We see some people, especially people who want to save money. So they don't have a real CTO, a chief technology officer, like a person with the experience, the competency to really plan for the project and okay, what exactly does it take to develop this new product, right? And to manage all the parties. No, so they don't have that. So maybe they want to say, oh, maybe the mechanical side seems to be relatively simple. Okay, just someone on Upwork. And then on the electronics, maybe another guy on Upwork, maybe this one need to pay a bit more because they think, oh, okay, it's probably more expensive. Then maybe they do the software themselves or they pay yet another person. And then they get to the point where they're blocked because there's no technical lead, right? Or maybe they involve a manufacturer for part of the work, maybe the electronics. And then the engineers who work on the electronics, they say, okay, well, that's the components, that's the size and everything. And then the person who works on the industrial design and the mechanical side, maybe will say, well, no, this is too big. You need to make your board smaller, blah, blah, blah. Oh, okay. But that's the best I can do. That's it. Oh, no, we have this problem because of this. And basically they start pointing fingers. And that's just an example. It could be, there's a lot of other ways it can play out. But then you get stuck because you don't really know, right? And nobody really makes the decisions. Okay. So you end up with different parts of the design that don't really fit each other. That's really a big problem. And in a lot of cases, then they go to a more serious, group of design engineers, and then these people look at it and say, well, this has to be redone. I'm really sorry, but there was no proper work on the design architecture. There was no proper risk analysis. There's no testing plan. There's no, based on a set of requirements, there's nothing. So you started on the wrong foot. You worked with people who did not ask for that, and they went in the wrong direction. And what they did is just not a good fit for what you need. Ouch. Okay. So I waited all this time. I paid all this money for basically nothing. Okay. That hurts, right? But it's actually quite common. So anyway, I'm kind of veering off course here. The main topic here in this episode is how to work with the manufacturer. So you can involve the manufacturer and you need to be very clear with them. Who is the tech lead? Is it going to be on your side? Is it going to be on, I don't know, a design agency, design house that you hire? Is it going to be the manufacturer's R&D team? You need to pick somebody, right? And you need to define the roles. And more often than not, in that case, what ends up happening is that the manufacturer and the R&D team is the integrator, right? So they need to integrate the electronics with the firmware within the mechanical elements, and especially basically the hardware software integration. The whole thing needs to work together, to speak to each other, right? And sometimes there's long sessions of debugging. Sometimes it takes more than a week to to get it to work, right? So all of that work, somebody's got to do it. Okay, and it doesn't come for free. So you need to plan for all this, basically. Be very clear about all that. Okay, so let's say you're still in that track where you develop your own products, right? You get to the end of product development, then you need to do, as I mentioned before, to go through the new product introduction process, make some custom tooling if necessary, do a build, one or two or three or more builds of samples with parts coming off tooling, use that for some reliability testing, for some compliance testing, and do all the work of preparing the manufacturing process and the testing process. And then by using 100% production intent processes, you actually validate, again, through pre-production pilot runs or whatever, trial builds, right? Small quantity batches. You validate that the manufacturing process and the testing process are okay in terms of quality and in terms of capacity or pace, right? And all of that, basically, there's two options. Option number one is you work with a manufacturer that know what they're doing here. They have a structured process for that. In that case, you review their structured process. If you are not familiar with it, you involve a consultant or an advisor who will review that and maybe point to ways that, I don't know, it could be, maybe certain things are missing, or maybe it's like really way too immature and too unstructured, or maybe it's pretty good, right? Maybe it needs a bit of adjustment because every project needs a little bit of adjustment. Okay. So in that case, if you feel that the manufacturer does have a good process for that, then you need to follow their lead, basically, right? And keep an eye on what they're doing and hold them accountable to the process. Okay. Otherwise, and unfortunately, that's most often the case, especially if you are really, let's say, not a big customer. You cannot work with very big very big manufacturers. You need to work with a lower tier manufacturer that has whatever 50, 100, 200, 300 people. Most of the time, they don't really know. They don't really have a good structured process. And that's especially true if they always tend to work with the same kind of product. Okay, so again, you go to a toaster factory, and these guys, they always tend to reuse the same printed circuit board designs and the same software and the same key components. Of course, there's some variations, right? But when they develop a new toaster, it's still a toaster, and they reuse a lot of the learning from their previous projects of developing a toaster. Okay.
Sure.
So if suddenly you come to them and you say, well, you've been making, toasters. Now I want you to make that kind of grill or whatever, like maybe a panini grill. Okay. And maybe at the beginning, they're going to say, oh yeah, no problem. It's just like a toaster. And, instead of being vertical, it's horizontal. It's the same, Okay. That's just a sales pitch. It's really not the same. Okay. Then it's a new product for them, right? And yeah, okay, a panini grill is not the most complicated product in the world, but still, you can't just say, oh, okay, let's make a prototype. Oh, okay, now we know what components we use in the prototype. Let's just buy all the components and, hack it together to make a batch of 5,000 pieces. This is extremely risky. Okay. So again, if they don't know the process for transferring a new product's design into manufacturing with relatively low risk, with the proper validation stages, then you need to guide them, or you need to involve a consultant, right? So that's really that's the most important, because if you do that right, then if the new product design has really gone through the the right process, and it's been tested for reliability. It's been tested and confirmed for compliance, and the manufacturing process has been validated. The key component suppliers have been qualified. They really can make the same product, consistently well. Okay. There's all kinds of things like this that are basically validated. The testing stations are okay, and so on. And then you ramp the volumes up little by little, and you keep how to say, jumping on the issues and driving some engineering changes where needed and improving the process, etc. Okay, if that whole process has been done well, you're gonna have a proper checklist for every critical component for incoming QC and then for in-process QC and for outgoing QC, and the people will be already trained to do all these inspections. And on the lines, the people will be trained to follow the proper work instructions. There will be the right process controls and the testing stations in the line and all these kind of things. The risk, the quality risk, is much lower once it's in mass production, because the whole thing, you have all the deliverables from that, all the benefits from that whole process. Okay. And you don't need to stay up at night and worry and, send inspectors to always check everything and so on. To a certain extent, you're working with a good process in place, right? So the likelihood of issues is lower. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you've done the groundwork in advance. But I mean, everybody listening, they're probably, whoa, slow down. I need to take notes. There's a lot to unpack in this 30 minutes, right? But it's absolutely a positive investment before diving in that's going to reduce your quality risks and risks of other things going wrong, as you say. So absolutely, it makes sense. Okay, so that's about half an hour on those kind of general tips that you want to be bearing in mind when you're going to start working with a manufacturer. And as I often say, in the show notes, I will try to leave links to a number of the topics covered so you can dig into those a bit deeper. We've definitely got several blog posts that go into topics like why you need what we would call mature product designs before you start working with a manufacturer, for example. So do look out for those. And so we'll wrap it up this time. Renaud, thanks for diving through all that. And to everybody listening, thanks for tuning in once again.
All right. Thanks, Adrian.
Thanks again for listening to this podcast, brought to you by the Sofeast Group. We're on a mission to provide you with everything you need to manufacture effectively in Asia, including inspections, auditing, new product development support, contract manufacturing, 3PL warehousing and fulfillment, and much, much more across Asia's key manufacturing areas. Visit us at sofeast.com, that's SOFEAST.com, to learn more and get help. If you've enjoyed the podcast today, please do rate, review and share, because it will really help others discover us too.